you're having with people are exciting. They don't get dry. You don't ask the wrong questions and lead it the wrong direction. And all of a sudden we end up with this awkward, boring conversation. How do we make those conversations exciting? Today we're talking about the secret to avoiding and preventing boring conversations. And if it's your first time here, my name is Caleb Morgan. I am a motivational speaker and coach, and my mission is to help you break through those illusions that could be holding you back so that you can build confidence, your communication and leadership, and ultimately just achieve what right now feels impossible. And today we are on the live stream talking again about communication, conversation. Yesterday we were talking about social confidence, getting up that confidence to be able to step into conversations. Today it's about what happens when you're in the conversation and you want to make sure it's not boring in any way. We want to make sure that it's exciting, both for you and for the person you're speaking with. How do we do that? And when I think about how we do that, it reminds me of the many years I've spent learning card tricks and illusions, close-up magic. Many, many years ago when I started on this journey, there was a magician mentor of mine, and he said, Caleb, I need you, and this is one of the very first years I was ever performing and beginning to learn magic. He said, I need you to focus on something called a toolbox of moves. You need your toolbox moves. I'm like, what does that mean? The toolbox move? And he goes, well, for example, and it's a little hard to see the cards here, but let me show you what he was talking about. Let's say, for example, Queen of Diamonds. Okay, that's the card that we're going to focus on here. Now, if I had a toolbox of moves, I would be able to, just automatically say, for example, the king, not the 10. So we know it's not top or bottom, but the moment I go like this, right about there, now the Queen of Diamonds is on the top, right? I can control a card with a toolbox move. That's one of the particular toolbox moves that I needed to learn to be adept in close-up magic. And so I was told, hey, Caleb, you need to get 6 moves, 6 sleight of hand techniques, 6 toolbox techniques that you will always be improving. You'll always be practicing them. They will never be done. And that's kind of daunting for like a brand new person in the craft, right? They're like, oh, I'm like, oh man, that's like never be done. Like, I don't know if I want to take that on. But he's like, no, listen, you will always be finding another degree of improvement, another way to work on these things, another angle, another, for example, even right now, I'm learning what he's saying. I'm using these techniques in a different way because I'm on a camera. Like, this is a different type of visual perspective, right? How do I adapt these techniques for a live stream? That's another just way to use these toolbox techniques. But he said, Caleb, I need you to get these and solidify your 6 toolbox moves. And that's the same thing that we can do in conversations, right? When we're preparing to have better conversations, when we've gotten to the point where we're working on our social skills and we really care about it, we need to think through what are our conversation toolbox moves, right? What is the conversation toolbox that we have? What are the different techniques that we can work on and say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and commit that I may never be done with this technique. I may never fully arrive at perfection because it's always going to be improving. And that's actually exciting, because I'm always learning, I'm always adding new things, and I'm always getting better. And there's always a way for me to improve, right? And as I get better and better, just like we talked about several live streams ago, you're going to build that level of competence so vast that all of a sudden you have such confidence that, hey, if I try something, if something were to go wrong, I have so many tools in my toolbox, my conversation toolbox, that I don't have to even worry about it. So building the conversation toolbox is how we make sure to prevent boring conversations. But the question now is, how do you build a conversation toolbox? What does that even look like, right? And so before we even get there, I want to mention, because I want to share with you one of my favorite ways to build a conversation toolbox, but I want to mention something because at the beginning of this live stream and all the live streams, I always mention that my mission is to help you break the illusions holding you back. And I realized I never really explained what that actually means, is that I realized a long time ago that a lot of the things that were holding me back in my life when it comes to, like I said, communication, confidence, leadership, just general things that are keeping me, or general things that I'm trying to improve upon, any of those specific topics or anything that I'm trying to improve upon in my career, in my life, in my leadership, of my family, sometimes these are just being held back by things that I don't even realize are not actually real. It's just a matter of perspective. And a lot of times, this happens to me all the time still, I would have a shift in perspective. I would start to realize, oh, here's what's actually true about this situation. And the moment I realize that, all of a sudden, it's like the key unlocks, and I realize, oh, I can go a totally different way on this. I can take totally different actions, and then I end up getting a totally different outcome. Only because I stopped believing that the reality I could see right now was like the final reality. And it's just like a magic trick. It's just like an illusion, right? Because if I just went ahead and explained to you how a particular magic trick worked and broke it down, it would take a few seconds. It would be very unexciting all of a sudden. All the mystery and the mystique would go out of it, and you're like, oh, well, that's simple. I didn't realize that. And that's the same way that I feel when I realize, oh, something in front of me that has been holding me back for so long is really just an illusion. I really just need to gather the right perspective and then take different actions on that perspective, and all of a sudden I can change the outcome. So the illusion, I feel like it's good for us to identify what's the illusion for, hey, boring conversations might happen, and what's the illusion that we might be believing that is causing boring conversations. And I would say it's probably, I don't know what to say. Right? You get into a conversation and you go, oh, snap, this is, I'm meeting somebody new for the first time. They maybe ask me a question, and then there's this awkward silence because I don't know what to say. But that's an illusion, right? Because think about this, the real perspective, the actual reality of the situation is, if you don't know something, what can you do? You can learn. So instead of focusing on, I don't know what to say, what if we shifted our focus to, hey, let's just pause that for a second. That's kind of the illusion here. I don't know what to say. Shift our focus to, hey, I'm going to learn what to say. And that's where our conversation toolbox comes in. That's where what I'm going to share with you today, one of the key tools in our toolbox, or key ways to develop our toolbox, is going to help you learn what to say. It's going to be a building process. It's going to be like building that confidence that we talked about before, where you have to do this over and over and over. But over time, all of a sudden you get so much more confident because, for instance, right now, I feel like I can have a conversation with almost anybody, and a good conversation at that, where it's exciting for both of us because I've built this conversation toolbox and it's so natural. And so this is what I want to share with you today. This is the way that I've found to build the conversation toolbox. One of the ways, there's many different ways, but one of the ways that's most effective is asking strategic questions. And I want to give you one of my favorite strategic questions to ask people that you've just met, right? And you could ask anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody you just met, but this is a way to deepen relationship with anybody that you've just met or somebody you've already known. A lot of times we know that we can ask somebody, hey, what do you do? What do you do for a living, right? And sometimes that even goes into, what's your passion? What's your hobby? What do you like to do? And that tells us a lot about a person, right? That's how we can relate to people. But there's an interesting follow-up strategic question that I love to ask. And when I say strategic question, the reason why it's strategic is because I want to already have my answer pre-planned so that if they ask me the question, I can respond, right? And it builds that rapport, it builds that collaboration. But the strategic question that I love to ask, once I figure out what this person's passion is or what their job is, I say, hey, what do you do? What do you do for a living? They tell me. And then I say this. Let me think, how would I say it? Actually, I wrote it down over here. What's something, there's a couple of different questions I asked, but this is my favorite one. What's something that no one would expect about what you do? What's something no one would expect about what you do? And a lot of times when I ask people this, they have to take a second and think, hold on, because that's not, people don't ask that. It's kind of a rare question to ask. And this is not original to me. I got that question, or maybe a version of that question for somebody else, but I've used it so many times and it comes up with such interesting responses. What's something that no one would expect about what you do? And they start to tell me. I was recently talking to a group of flight pilots, like students who are learning how to become pilots in flight school. And that's such a rare, you don't get an opportunity to talk to like flight pilots very, like in school very often. Even, I mean, when's the last time you talked to the pilot on an airplane? You get to, probably see him on the way into the plane and maybe see him on the way out. But when you have a conversation with these people, especially people that are learning how to do it, right? So these were a bunch of students in flight school. And I said, hey, what's something that no one would expect about being a pilot? Like if I wasn't a pilot, I would never expect that that's part of what you guys do. And one of them piped up and he said, when we are like flying a plane and all of a sudden it's time to land, a landing is literally a controlled crash. Like a landing is a controlled crash. He's like, yeah. So like the landing gear and everything, we're calculating. Obviously, there's a whole lot that goes into it and a lot of professionalism and everything, but we're literally falling out of the sky and controlling it. Now, that may be a little distressing for some folks to think about, but obviously, it's very, very professional. And I just heard recently that like flying is still one of the safest methods of travel. But I just thought that was an interesting perspective. That's how they think about it in flight school. And how would I have ever known that if I wouldn't have asked, what's something no one would expect about what you do? And so now here's what's interesting. Now I take that piece of knowledge that they gave me and I put it into my conversation toolbox, right? Kind of like the toolbox, move I showed you at the beginning for controlling a card, secretly controlling a card without anybody knowing. I have that secretly in my conversation toolbox. And the next time I met somebody, which, believe it or not, happened a couple months later, I met somebody else and happened to be having a conversation about pilots. I was able to take that piece of knowledge and say, man, I just met a pilot actually. And they were telling me, I said, what's something crazy about what you do? And they said, whenever we land, it's actually a controlled crash when we're basically falling out of the sky and controlling it and landing in perfect like smoothness. I'm like, what an interesting thing. And that, created this interesting moment in our conversation because I was sharing that bit of information, that thing from my toolbox with these new folks, right? But I've gathered little bits of data about all sorts of different topics and jobs and passions and hobbies and things that people have said over the years. And now I can use those tools in all sorts of different conversations. And I just got to use that tool right now. I didn't even plan on talking about the flight school students before I hit record here, but that was a piece of information I could use right now just to help illustrate this point, right? So you never know when you can use this stuff, but it's very valuable to have this conversation toolbox ready to go for when you need it. So you can do this right away. And matter of fact, I want you to do this right away. I'm challenging you in these videos. Don't just be a passive bystander. Be an active participant here. I want you, as soon as this video is over, and I'm going to take a moment to look. I think we might have saw some comment come in. I want to make sure I get to any questions anybody has. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat as we wrap up here. But right as soon as this video is over, I want you to take a minute, 5 minutes. It's not going to take very long. You can call up a friend, you can call up a family member, you could text somebody, and here, let me give you something, a simple way to like make it an easy introduction. Hey, I heard this, I'm following this guy, Caleb, on social media. By the way, if you're not subscribed, do me a favor, subscribe. I've never asked for that before. I feel like the YouTubers that ask for subscribing. Hit the subscribe button so you know when we're going live on this channel, and when new videos come out and that kind of thing. You say, hey, I'm following this guy Caleb on social media, and he put a challenge out, which was to ask somebody what's something about what they do that I would never expect. Right? And this would be easier for you probably to ask this question from a family member or a friend because you already probably know what they do, or you know what they're interested in, what's their hobby, right? If it's something you both do, it's kind of a weird question because you kind of know a lot about that. If you both play chess, if you play chess with your best friend, it'd be kind of weird to say, what's something about chess that I would never expect? It's like, no. Ask somebody that you don't know a whole lot about what they do, and say, what's something about what you do that I would never expect? And then I want you to come back to this video and put it in the comments, because that'll help us all be better about conversations. That'll give us more data and more tools for our conversation toolbox. And it'll also give you a little bit of accountability in this challenge, because I want you to take action. The faster we take action, the faster we reach our goals. So that's the challenge I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Let me check the comments and just see what we have here. Take a quick drink of water here. Awesome. Randall is checking in. Good to see you, Randall. Thanks for being here. Awesome. And also, do me a favor. I got one more request. I don't think, well, was the first request? No, it was more of a challenge. It's more of a challenge. I'm calling you to stronger conversations, all right? You wouldn't be watching this if you weren't interested in having stronger conversations. That's what I'm betting on. But do me a favor, in the comments, put anything that you think would be a related, interesting topic to talk about on the live stream, right? Would there be anything else that's like, yeah, I like what you're saying about the conversation toolbox, but also that makes me think about this. What about this? Any questions that you have, anything that comes up in your brain, just to help expand the thoughts on this live stream. Want to make it more and more valuable for people as we watch. So thank you so much for being here. Let's go out and break those illusions so that we can achieve what once felt impossible. My name is Caleb Morgan, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.